Called me up a few months ago and talked about the premise of the conference. I just said I'm all in. 15 years ago, I published my first book, and in the last chapter, kind of a look forward, I suggested everyone find a way to use their God-given superhuman talent for good. I also predicted the internet would make everything so transparent we should all underwear that fits. I predicted that the internet would be God's truth serum to business. Third one, proof that Trump never read my book or any book. I said that the days of the corporate comb-over are numbered. You have a bald spot, embrace it, right? Shave your head, do something. The fourth one, which my editor cut, my editor cut the fourth one out of taste. I said that the internet will eventually reveal the inner asshole in everyone. You can say that today. So anyway, I'm working on a new book. So I'm going to talk a little bit about purpose and about finding a way to make a difference as a professional as anybody. And then I'm going to lift the covers a little bit on the premise of the book I'm writing now, midway into it. And then I want to show you a startup that I think embodies a lot of what you've been hearing so far today. I happen to be a co-creator in it. My son is the CEO. That doesn't sound funny. But it's probably going to change the world, very disruptive, and it feeds on the power of transparency. So let's get in. So what purpose? And we heard some speakers too, like find your purpose. And there's a lot of great purposes out there. I'm not one to sweat small ideas, so I go for the big ones. I'm going after this one. The war on truth, the war on trust, is a war against humanity. And I don't think we have to look very far to see why that's true, right? I've never seen it. I'm a journalism grad, right? I've been on an advisory council for a journalism school for 12 years. And I remember the first time I saw Sean Hannity report an anonymous tweet in 2008, and I went, oh my God, we're doomed. But I think we've seen a lot of propaganda, a lot of disinformation, a lot of stuff that's been empowered by artificial intelligence tools. So everybody pay attention. The future, this is like chapter 2 of a 10-chapter book in terms of this war on truth, the war on facts, the war on science. There's 3 things that can save the republic. This is my theory. These 3. Transparency, truth, and trust. I call these the Earth's most rare elements. This is alchemy at its best. If you take any one of those 3 away, it doesn't work. You need all 3. You need transparency, you need trust, and you need truth. Whether the truth is perceived, and the way you get from truth to trust, as you heard an earlier speaker, you get closer to it, you reveal it, you pull the layers back on it. So those are the 3 themes of the book I'm writing now, 3 big sections in that order. So look for it sometime around the holidays. We'll see if I can stay focused on it. Next up, I think we need to embrace total transparency. I think if you're a company and you have a heinous CEO who's a walking HR violation, I'd go work somewhere else. It's just a matter of time before something happens there. And I think some companies did this. Nike in 1999 listed every factory on earth that touched its product. And in 2004, I think, every sub-factory that created a dye or a shoelace eyelet or something. Still 10, 15 years ahead of other companies to do that. So prepare for the lightning bolts and look at your company. I was at a think tank thing in Seattle in 2010 on sort of cyber security, and some of the smartest minds on earth, including a young man who had been on his way to prison by our own NSA and some other folks, one of the most notorious hackers in Eastern Europe. And I was blown away. I'm just like, I don't know why I was there. I'm like a marketing guy. But he scared the hell out of me, because he basically laid out the capabilities and where the world was heading. This is 7 years ago, and he was right. And so I looked at him. I sat next to him at lunch. I go, so nobody's safe, right? He goes, yeah. And he goes, but the weird thing is, people still cut me off on the highway. I said, what do you mean? He goes, I just need a license plate. So I asked him what he drove. He drove a red FERRARI. He's in West LA. But he can get into your email and your bank account that night. So it's all pretty porous. So just assume full transparency. And also imagine a world with no secrets for just a moment. It's a scary thing to think about, right? But in some respects, we'd probably be better off if we knew the funding behind a political candidate, if we knew the full environmental impact of something we consumed or some company that was in our neighborhood, right? So I think we need to think that way. So imagine where there are just many, many fewer secrets, and a place where facts are no longer enough. This is our head of the EPA telling us why there's not enough research yet to identify man's impact on climate change. To me, that's horrific. But we're now at a place, again, a war on science, a war on facts, and it's not going away. So what we have to do is bring creativity and passion to truth. It used to be that truths could just be self-evident. That's not enough anymore, even from a constitutional standpoint. So we have never needed creative storytellers and designers more than we do now. And I implore you, if you can make sure there's some fundamental truths out there, make them sing. You know, find some way to make sure no one doesn't feel an emotional response to what you just did. And unleashing the power of trust. This is getting into rare supply, but some companies have figured this out. In 2011, I met Brian Chesky at Airbnb and the team there, and I've been helping him off and on since. And I think what you have is a brand that operates almost completely on trust. And I would venture a guess it will be one of the world's most powerful brands. I think they're well on their way. Because they assume that people are inherently good. That's where they start. Now, they also scrub the heck out of hosts and guests, and they make sure they know who you are. But I think there's a trust proxy that if you can actually be trusted in this weird world, you're going to do really well. I think we're at a point, too, where artificial intelligence, AI, has met EI, which I call evil intent, in the war on democracy. It used to be that the top mathematicians 20, 25 years ago, instead of going to NASA, they went to Wall Street. And maybe 10, 12 years ago, they went to Silicon Valley startups or here in New York or wherever. And that was mostly to make people a lot of money. And I think what we've seen in the last 3 or 4 years is AI-fueled propaganda, particularly on social media. And I think it's slightly terrifying to me because I don't think any of us really know where that's going. I call it Oppenheimer's remorse. We've created something incredibly powerful. We still don't really understand what it'll do and what it could mean. These two of my favorite guys here. And what you don't see to the right of Mr. Bannon is Cambridge Analytica. How many of you people know about that? A few. Those that don't, please research it. It's a super quant firm. It's very good at parsing out the world's population into like 7,000 characters and personality types and can customize messaging to you in ways that either make you angry, make you happy, make you sad, conform to some sort of belief you have. It's very powerful stuff. But I encourage you to research it because we're seeing this play out now, literally real time. My question is, isn't it time we unleash data for the greater good? I believe it is. We have to find a way to do this. I've been lucky enough with my son and a few other crazy rebel scientists, toxicologists, developers to actually take on environmental health risk. So about 2 years ago, we set out to consume all the EPA data we could find. We also consumed NIH, CDC data, federal, state, local, county, city, some private stuff thrown in. What you see here is a map of Chicago. Red is not good. Red are neighborhoods. These are neighborhoods, basically, in census blocks, where the lead risk meets or exceeds Flint, Michigan. It's terrifying. I could put Philadelphia up there. I could put most any city in Ohio up there. And frankly, it's also on the West Coast. A lot from older paint, but you can also in the water system. So we're doing, and you can see some tabs up there. It's not just lead. It's air toxics, it's soil. And then we've also, as I said, put in some health data. What you see here is 2 identical maps, and the bottom blob is Buffalo, and the blob on the upper left is Niagara Falls. This is what the EPA calls an RCI aggregate toxicity score. So they measure all the toxic releases in an area, and they have all kinds of sophisticated computer modeling based on wind plumes, based on buoyancy of certain carcinogens or chemicals, and track it over time. So what you see on the left, in terms of where red's not good, again, red's just one of those things not good. You have a risk rate in terms of an exposure level is pretty high. That's 2014. On the right is 1988. So the motto for upstream is where you live matters. What we're also finding is where you have lived really matters, particularly as a kid. When you see cancer hotspots, we pay a lot of attention to those as well. There's a lot of data there. So that's just sort of a look beneath the engine. So we took all this information, and oh, by the way, we rolled in the cancer data. New York State's got some of the best cancer data out there. That's Buffalo. What you see is a 99% confidence it's a hotspot. There's nothing random about that. So I don't want to depressing any of you who grew up in Buffalo, but if it makes you feel, it makes you feel any better, and you'll see in a minute, the air in West Seattle is more toxic than New York City. That's my home. And we saw that data. I could hear the data scientists screaming in the next room. They're all from the Northwest. So we took all that data, put it in a really simple user interface. Instead of giving it to healthcare companies, instead of giving it to insurance companies, instead of giving it to politicians, we're giving it to consumers. The public soft launch just happened 2 weeks ago. It's been very quiet. I'll show you a website address. You can pull it down. 5 free addresses anywhere in the United States. Pull it up. Check out where you're born. Check out where you live. You're thinking about buying a house. It's probably pretty important information. So what we did is this is UI about a month ago. It's just even better now. But you can see where you just plug in an address, and then up pops your headlines. So we'll search the 4 or 5 key risks you should be paying attention to. You know, it's not all bad. You'll see green. You'll see yellow. You'll see whatever. And then up here on the left, that's Seattle, and you can see breast cancer very, very high, 94th percentile, and there's some markets at 98th percentile, 99th percentile. And you can drill down into any of those. The screen on the right is breast cancer for that area. You can see it's in the high mark up there. We live in a time when the Environmental Protection Authority is being compromised, and I think every human being has a right to know what's in the air they breathe, the water they drink, and the soil in their backyard. So that's the motivation. Closing thought, I hope you all find a way to use your superhuman powers for good. This thing is probably my last brand work. I've had a great career, but I can't think of anything more valuable than that. So thank you.